Caligula. The name is synonymous with monstrosity, depravity, and cruelty. It is hard to imagine that the name was first used as an affectionate nickname. His name at birth is Gaius, but Caligula is the nickname his father's soldiers called him when his mother used to dress him up in a little soldier's outfit while on deployment. Caligae are the standard army shoes, and so Caligula is roughly translated as Little Boots, or maybe even Bootsy. Nonetheless, the cute nickname sticks. All of the mad and perverse stories told about Caligula in his 20s may or may not be true, but they do paint a picture of a powerful figure who has lost his grip on reality. The needs of the nation will be ignored in favor of one man who does as he pleases, while lives are hanging in the balance. Mr. Seeger Presents The Rise and Fall of the Roman Empire, a Cautionary Tale. Episode 6, The Mad Emperor Caligula. His father, Germanicus, is the nephew of Emperor Tiberius and Rome's best commander, and so, as a toddler, Caligula becomes the darling mascot of Germanicus's soldiers, perhaps receiving too much attention. It is possible that the personal charm he develops allows him to survive within the tumultuous and deadly royal family. Caligula is only 7 years old when his popular father quickly falls fatally ill in the Middle East, possibly poisoned by the Roman governor of Syria, perhaps under the orders of Emperor Tiberius, who may have been jealous of Germanicus's popularity and viewed his nephew as a threat. A decade later, his mother, Agrippina, and his 2 older brothers are convicted of treason, accused of plotting to overthrow Tiberius. All 3 die in prison. These deaths must have some psychological impact on Caligula, but he hides, or perhaps suppresses, his emotions well, and is protected by his uncle Tiberius, the emperor. At the age of 18, Caligula is invited to live with Tiberius on Capri, amidst the orgies of perversion, into which Caligula seems to revel. Driven, even tormented by exotic desires at a young age, Caligula needs non-stop stimulation. He even likes to watch the emperor's enemies being tortured. Such perversity even shocks the depraved Tiberius. Tiberius himself comments that he is raising a viper who will one day bite him and bring about the ruin of Rome. Naming Caligula as his successor is a surprising move on the part of Tiberius. After all, the public opinion is that Tiberius orchestrated the murder of Caligula's father, but Caligula is able to shift his persona to ingratiate himself to anyone at any time, even Tiberius. This skill may have played a big part in why Tiberius never has him arrested, tried, or executed, like Caligula's mother and his 2 older brothers. Whether the 78-year-old Tiberius dies naturally or is murdered is uncertain. Legend says that a very ill Tiberius is thought to be dead, with Caligula at his bedside. Caligula leaves the bedside with Tiberius' signet ring to be greeted by a crowd outside as the next emperor. But news follows Caligula outside that Tiberius has recovered and is now asking for food. A terrified Caligula orders Macro, the new Praetorian prefect, to hurry in and smother Tiberius with a pillow. Upon the death of Tiberius, Caligula, aged 24, is granted full imperial powers by the Senate. The people of Rome rejoice at the death of old Tiberius and the ascension of the youthful Caligula, who is still known as the darling son of the great Germanicus. No one imagines that anybody can be as bad as Tiberius. Tactfully, Caligula plays down his relationship with Tiberius, instead emphasizing his connection to Augustus. His mother, Agrippina Major, was Augustus's first granddaughter, and his father, Germanicus, descended from Livia Augusta. In addition to burying Tiberius, Caligula brings the ashes of mother and brothers back from exile for a proper burial in the mausoleum of Augustus. In his first year as emperor, Caligula performs good deeds. He abolishes Tiberius's infamous treason trials. He gives much to the poor. He rewards the Praetorian Guard with an increase of salary because they helped him to power, and gives generous bonuses to Rome's soldiers. He begins the construction of 2 great aqueducts that will bring even more fresh water to the capital city. Thus, the beginning of his reign seems to be refreshing to the Romans, and completely opposite to the hated old Tiberius. Because his father was so popular among the people and the army, it is only natural that the same adoration would be bestowed upon Caligula. The honeymoon ends 6 months into his first year when he falls seriously ill. One possibility is a nervous breakdown, but a physical ailment is just as likely. In his youth, he suffered from epilepsy, and now he suffers from insomnia and terrifying nightmares. Perhaps his sickness is burnout, from the frantic activity of the first few months on the throne. Whatever the cause, Caligula disappears from public life for some time. Once he recovers, the illness may have caused serious mental deterioration. Most likely, it brings Caligula's attention to the fact that he is mortal, and that others in the family can benefit from his death. Tiberius actually named Caligula to co-rule with Gemellus, Tiberius' grandson, but Caligula set aside the will and claimed that 18-year-old Gemellus was unfit to rule due to insanity. Now Caligula suspects Gemellus is plotting against him, so he kills him. Another casualty is Macro, the prefect of the Praetorians who smothered Tiberius with a pillow to make Caligula emperor. Macro has been confident of a rapid promotion, but Caligula sees him as a threat. Caligula tricks Macro into giving up his command of the Praetorians in order to become the governor of Egypt. Upon his departure, Macro is arrested and then is forced to commit suicide. His second year of rule is marked by a serious personal loss, the death of his sister Drusilla. His ancient biographer tells the story that while still in his teens, he was caught in bed with Drusilla. Indeed, rumors from antiquity claim that he had incestuous relations with all three of his sisters. Perhaps the story is an invention. Nonetheless, Drusilla is Caligula's favorite sister. When she dies of a fever in the year 38, he orders for deification and never recovers from the agony of her loss. Caligula is married 4 times before turning 30. Before becoming emperor, he marries his first wife, but she soon dies, giving birth to a stillborn. His second wife he snatches from the altar of another man's wedding and takes her for himself, only to cast her aside a couple months later. The story gets worse. She is still his property as far as Caligula is concerned. When he suspects that she is seeing her original intended husband, Caligula becomes enraged and banishes her into exile. He divorces his third wife after 6 months of marriage because she appears infertile. Caligula fares more luckily in his fourth and final wife, Caesonia. She's several years older than he, but she has earned his respect while being his mistress. In the year 39, they marry and soon have a daughter, Julia Drusilla, named after his beloved late sister. Whatever his faults, Caligula is devoted to Caesonia and his daughter. Caligula's extravagance is almost as legendary as his cruelty. He uses the majority of the vast fortune Tiberius left behind to treat himself, always finding new ways to waste the treasury of Rome. He dissolves precious pearls in vinegar and then drinks them. He has his dinner guests' food prepared in gold leaf. He has 2 jewel-encrusted ships built. So enormous is one floating palace that it contains baths, porticos, and gardens. One of his famous spectacles is the bridge of boats built at an elite resort town near the Bay of Naples. Merchant ships are requisitioned, and new ships are built on the spot to form a continuous double line across the bay, a distance of over 2 miles. He then has earth heaped upon them and graded to create a road-like surface, including lodges and resting places. On the first day of its grand opening, Caligula dons the actual breastplate of Alexander the Great, supposedly looted from the tomb at Alexandria, and gallops across on horseback. The entire spectacle and temporary bridge are enormously costly. Caligula's lavish forms of entertainment for the mob also exhaust the treasury. He is interested in finding new ways to recoup the money. For example, he turns the imperial palace into a brothel, even pimping out his sisters to wealthy guests. The only way to make up for his tremendous deficit is to increase taxes among the wealthy to a very high rate. He even fabricates criminal cases against rich men and requires the payment of massive fines. Caligula chooses to command the army in the conquest of Britain. It has been over 90 years since Julius Caesar became the first Roman general to invade the island, only to abort the mission of conquest. Now Caligula wants to conquer Britain for Rome. Unlike his father, Caligula was never experienced in commanding an army. Caligula is unsuccessful in this endeavor because of his own incompetence with the military and because of some blundering army generals on the Rhine. The army does make it to the English Channel, but they do not cross. Legend says that Caligula orders the army to gather seashells instead of crossing over to Britain. Some scholars believe the seashells to be a mistranslation of the word for siege huts. At any rate, the operation may have been cancelled because the exiled son of a British king already crossed the Channel to offer submission to the power of Rome. Or it may have been the troops refused to budge, fearful of an expedition across the ocean to the edge of the world. Certainly, Caligula is a sadist who delights in the pain and humiliation of others, and who has a perverse sense of humor. He proudly tells one guest that with just a nod on his part, he can kill him. Caligula treats his state dinners as a cattle market, in which he appraises his nobles' wives like livestock. He looks them over, and sends a slave over to summon this or that woman. Then he makes an ostentatious show of retiring with her to the bedroom. All along, the woman's husband is left at the dinner table cuckolded. Finally, Caligula returns to rate her performance at the dinner table. Officials are often subjected to petty humiliations. Some are made to run alongside his chariot just to have a conversation. Others are made to stand before him in just their undergarments. But then Caligula is said to have enjoyed pranking the public as well. For example, he stages games with the most useless gladiators set against the mangiest, most decrepit animals. Moreover, he orders that the awnings over the terraces be taken down during the hottest part of the day, and that no one is allowed to leave. Caligula is a passionate devotee of chariot racing and gladiatorial matches. He trains with gladiatorial weapons, appears dressed as a gladiator, and sometimes stages mock or private performances. The games provide ample outlets for his cruelty. On one occasion, there's a shortage of cattle to feed the wild beasts, so Caligula orders criminals to be fed to them instead. On another occasion, when the spectators at the games support an opposing team, he bursts out, "I wish the Roman people had but a single neck." One of the most famous stories about Caligula concerns his horse, Incitatus, who lives in a great, luxurious stable made of marble. Incitatus wears purple blankets and a collar of precious stones. Guests to the imperial dinners are invited in Incitatus's name, and the horse as well attends these dinners. On the eve of an important parade, so as to be sure his horse's slumbers are not disturbed, he sends soldiers to enforce strict silence in the streets around his stable. Legend says that Caligula wanted to make his horse a consul of Rome. Clearly, his extreme devotion to this horse humiliates senators. Caligula's relationship with the Senate deteriorates. In the year 39, he lashes out at the Senate, accusing senators of complicity in the executions of Tiberius's reign, including those of his mother and brothers. Then, midway through the year 39, he expels the two consuls from office, perhaps out of suspicion of treason. This is only a prelude, however, to a much more dangerous conspiracy to overthrow him, involving Caligula's surviving sisters, Agrippina Minor and Livilla. A third party in the conspiracy is the widow of his beloved sister Drusilla, a man named Lepidus. Both surviving sisters have become lovers of Lepidus, and they plan to kill Caligula and place Lepidus on the throne. Unfortunately for them, the conspiracy is discovered and Lepidus is executed. Meanwhile, Caligula sends his two sisters into exile, taking all of their money. At the end of his reign, Caligula claims that he is a living god in the form of a mortal. In eastern provinces, the idea of the Roman emperor being a living god is nothing new. In fact, Caligula is worshipped in Asia Minor, modern-day Turkey, with a special shrine. But in Western Europe, living emperors are not gods. Nonetheless, he builds two temples for himself, one on the Capitoline Hill near Jupiter's temple, and another built on the Palatine Hill. At this latter temple, he installs a golden statue of himself, and each morning it is dressed exactly as the living Caligula is that day. He forces leading citizens to pay enormous sums for the honor of becoming his priests. He begins to dress like a variety of gods and goddesses in front of foreign dignitaries at public events. He even refers to himself as Jupiter in public documentation. He even orders that the Temple of Jerusalem be converted into an imperial shrine to him, outraging the Jewish people. But Caligula is dead before that can happen. By the final months of the year 40, Caligula has lost support almost everywhere by his capriciousness and cruelty. His bizarre and sadistic behavior has tested the limits of the Senate's patience. Caligula is not yet 30 years old. And so, the prospect of an entire lifetime of his rule has become unbearable to the leading citizens of Rome. The final straw comes when Caligula announces that he is planning to move the capital of the empire to Alexandria in Egypt, so that he can be actively worshipped as a Roman pharaoh. This plan proves too much even for the leaders of the Praetorian Guards, who are assigned to protect Caligula. The assassination is planned to occur during a day at the Games, in a temporary auditorium in front of the imperial palace. When Caligula leaves the auditorium, he travels through a narrow passageway. Here he finds the conspirators, one who slashes Caligula's neck from behind, and another who stabs him in the chest. Caligula falls to the ground, writhing in pain, and will be finished off by some 30 stab wounds from other conspirators, some of whom deliberately thrusting their swords into his privates. In the melee, some Praetorians, who were not privy to the conspiracy, rush in to kill the conspirators. In the violent confusion, several innocent bystanders are cut down too. The ancient historian Cassius Dio says, "On this day, Caligula learned by experience that he was not a god." The conspirators then find and kill Caligula's wife and infant daughter. When Caligula's sisters, Agrippina Minor and Livilla, are recalled from exile, they locate his remains and give him a proper burial in the mausoleum of Augustus, despite his own cruelty to them. Caligula's megalomania may have resulted from his strange childhood. Indeed, he witnessed his mother and older brothers being convicted for plotting against Tiberius, and/or Caligula's behavior may have resulted from his mental disorders. Nevertheless, his name is erased from all official documents, and all of his statues are torn down. Had Caligula's rule lasted only 6 months, he might have been applauded as a generous leader who sought to give power and a voice back to the plebeian citizenry. His memory would rival that of his father Germanicus for his good public deeds. Unfortunately for Rome, Caligula's rule lasted 3 years and 10 months too long. One family member who remains after the onslaught of executions and exiles is Caligula's uncle, Claudius, who has been ignored his entire life by his extended family due to physical deformities and disabilities. Claudius is mostly spared throughout Tiberius's and Caligula's reigns of terror because he is considered no threat. As we will see in our next episode, the least likeliest emperor, Uncle Claudius, will find himself thrust out from behind a curtain to the most powerful throne on earth.